that doctors tend to prescribe overpriced medicines only because the medical app has given them a gift.
Historically, that's been true.
A medicine guy, think of starting their own pharmaceutical company.
In India, out of 12,500 manufacturers, only 20% of them are WHO-GMP approved.
So how is the rest of the 80% functioning in India? How can doctors get funding for their pharmaceutical companies?
Nowadays, you have private equity firms who are very keen to invest in healthcare and pharmaceuticals.
India is said to produce 35% of fake drugs in the world.
35% number is terribly hyped up.
India is called the pharmacy of global south. Why do you think so that there is no R&D in India?
R&D is not just about how much money you spend on R&D.
An Indian target of $450 billion in Indian pharmaceutical industry.
We are not going to achieve $450 billion.
Do you think India is ready to tackle COVID if cases arise again? We are building India's largest community of medicos. Welcome to the Nachiket Bhatia Show. But before I go on, I would like to complain a little bit. 89% of our audience has still not subscribed to the channel. So before I move on to the esteemed guest of today's show, I would request to each one of you, please press the bell icon and subscribe to the channel. Today's message is very clear. It is a message from a CEO of a pharmaceutical company that how pharmaceutical world is changing all around and India is leading the change. India is thinking about R&D, research and development. There is a delicate balance between a pharmaceutical company and the doctors, and only together they can make our country better, leader of the pharmaceutical industry throughout the world. And today the speaker is Mr. Nikkhil K. Masurkar. He comes from a family of pharmacy pioneers. His great-grandmother, Mrs. Rukhma Vitthal Masurkar, created herbal skin treatments back in 1930s Karnataka. And his grandfather, Mr. G.V. Masurkar, was known as the CROCIN Man of India. Imagine that kind of legend ancestry. Mr. Nikhil has done his pharmaceutical background from King's College London and then joined the Royal College of Pharmaceuticals. Today, as CEO of Entot Pharmaceuticals, he is running one of India's biggest pharmaceutical brands, and he is with us today to tell us the clear vision pharmaceutical industry holds for our country. So let's put our hands together and let's welcome Mr. Nikkhil K. Masurkar. So hi Nikhil and welcome to the Nachiket Bhatia Show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Nachiket.
So Nikhil, the biggest reason for getting you to our podcast as an esteemed guest is to put up a message to all the doctors out there that there is a change in the pharmaceutical industry. Big pharma is, through the series, through the rumors and everything is always related to money. That when you are into pharma, it's big money, it's the oil of the medical world, and these are the kind of words that are used. So today we are going to break all those myths, and I think you are the best person to do so. So before we get into that, I would like to know everything about Nikhil, how you started. Okay, you come from a family of doctors. I think you're the fourth generational person in a pharmaceutical family. So I'm sure that there must be a lot of pressure to become a doctor yourself. But you chose something different. So what's the journey of Mr. Nikhil here?
So I studied pharmacy in the UK, and it was not forced upon me by my parents. In fact, my grandfather was one of India's first few registered pharmacists. So being a pharmacist was, in the family. My forefathers were all doctors, and then somehow we shifted towards pharmacy. It's been a great journey, and I've learned so much in the last 20 years. So I'm the fourth generation of what we're trying to do, and it's been something. I've always been very research focused rather than more commercial focused. So for me to have come from the UK, come to India, and then be part of the industry here was always, a big challenge. But the mindset is changing now, and we're moving towards a more research-based industry. So I'm, very glad that that is happening, and I think this is just the start of things to come.
Let's talk about India, the pharmaceutical scenario in India. India is called the pharmacy of global south. Yet, I see there are a lot of bottlenecks and structural setbacks, which I think that does not make India ready to lead. In your own opinion, I'm sure you know the industry in and out. What do you think are those bottlenecks, those structural setbacks, and how our government or maybe every one of us can come together and seal those bottlenecks?
So our Indian pharma industry has always been very kind of generic manufacturing centered. I think one of the problems has been we haven't been too much research centric. R&D has been a big challenge for us. We haven't been able to innovate in new molecules, in new innovations, and that's been kind of the bottleneck for us. However, that is changing now, and I think since the pandemic, we've all woken up. We've realized that जब हम बोलते हैं आत्मनिर्भर भारत, we have to be self-reliant when it comes to R&D. So that if there is another pandemic in the future, we should know how to innovate and upscale those, in a very fast way. So I think this is what the problem has been, and but I think we are moving in the right direction.
Why do you think so that there is no R&D in India? Even the right now the Modi government is focusing so much on generic medicines. I think they launched their own campaign as well. So if they're making their generic medicines, of course there must be some kind of R&D that is going behind those medicines. So I would say the R&D is there. Why do you think R&D is not there?
See, when I'm talking about R&D, I'm talking about indigenous formulations, new medicines in India that are not available elsewhere in the world. See, there are a lot of medical conditions in India which are not a problem of the West, and those require research by Indian pharma companies so that those medicines can be launched here, and then we could be a global leader even when it comes to the global South. And that hasn't been happening that much. R&D is not just about how much money you spend on R&D. People always look at it in that way. It's about the mindset. And for the Indian mindset to change from volume driven to value driven has taken a long time. Luckily, now we're in a situation where that mindset is changing very fast. We're seeing a lot of energy into R&D. We're seeing young Indian pharma entrepreneurs, putting their efforts into new age research, into AI, into genomics, into biotechnology products. That is happening now. So I think the next 10 years is going to be amazing for India when it comes to R&D.
So if you had to, let's suppose, hypothetically, if you had to advise our government how to do the correct R&D, what would that advice be?
There are a lot of government schemes now which are promoting R&D, especially in the MSME sector. But a lot more funding is required. Funding is required. We need to upskill our people as well. I think Indian scientists are not paid well enough. There's only a handful of companies offering really well-paid jobs. In the MSME sector, where I think innovation is needed, the funding is not quite there for scientists. And that is why a lot of scientists basically, they kind of move away, or, they don't get the right kind of jobs. And that I think should happen. So not just R&D schemes for new research, but also I think for staffing, for upskilling, for training, and kind of getting the academia, medical professionals and industry together, on one under one kind of roof, on one platform to actually kind of make it happen. I think that is needed, and the government should move towards that.
Do you think the population of India, being such a vast population, is always price conscious? So even if any pharma companies tries to do a R&D, they are not able to give that kind of value, the pricing, because the customers, the population will never accept a drug which is of a very high pricing. They always tend to go for a drug which has a lower pricing. Do you think that also has an effect on the R&D? Because there is no margin for the companies to do that kind of R&D which can support that drug.
I think the spending power in India when it comes to medicines has definitely increased. There is no doubt about it. People are willing to spend more for a medicine that is properly researched. which is something that's going to really change their life. Now we're looking at recently the anti-obesity drugs, which has been in the news. I mean, they cost thousands of rupees, and still there is a huge market for it. So it's not that people want cheap medicines anymore. Yes, there is a segment of the population which cannot afford, but largely, if you look at India, 800 million people currently pay the full price for their medicines, and they have no problems in spending for something that they feel is, something really genuine in terms of treating a certain condition. So I don't think affordability is a huge problem in India, considering our vast population, and that has kind of given the encouragement for Indian-born pharma companies to start spending more on R&D and to create value. We're in the process of creating value, and when we talk about value, we're not just talking about making medicines more expensive. We're talking about making them cost-effective. We still have medicines which are available at much less the price here than say in many of the other countries, and definitely in the regulated markets. We have the ability to do research at 1/10 the cost of what would traditionally be done in the US or in Europe. So even if we spend money on research, we will still produce affordable medicines, and that ecosystem and infrastructure is here in India.
If that is the kind of scenario, why are Indian pharma companies focused heavily on the US market?
See, I've always, talked about our pharma industry being very US centric and not very India centric. In fact, I spoke about it last year as well when the data that comes to us is that almost 50% of many pharma companies' revenues comes from the US, from one country alone. Whereas in India, we have 800 plus million people who are there. It's a largely untapped domestic market. So we need to be more India centric. All this time what's happened is the realization from the US has been very good, and therefore it's been a market where people have spent a lot of money and they've tried to get a lot of products US FDA approved. I've always kind of lobbied for the fact that we need to shift our attention from the US, go more towards India. In our country, we have a lot to do. There's a lot of medical conditions for which there's no treatment and for which we're not paying attention. We are more kind of obsessed with the US. And I think that India-centric shift is going to make all the difference. And that is what we're doing as an organization as well.
Almost 2.5 lakh graduates come from pharmacy every year. Yet only less than 5% enter into R&D. What do you think is the reason? And what changes would you recommend in the academic cycle so that people get to be more focused towards R&D and think about a bigger goal rather than the commercial ones from the day one?
So firstly, I mean, there are not enough well-paid jobs in research. Our scientists are not really given the kind of status and respect that we should give. If you look at the US, for example, you have scientists which are paid for a period of 8 to 10 years, a decent salary, so they can work on certain pieces of research. In India, it's not the case. However, now what's happening is there are a lot of these research clusters, research companies who are aggressively investing in R&D, and they're giving good jobs and well-paid jobs and really meaningful jobs to scientists who have probably studied pharmacy and want to move on to R&D. So that 5% I think is going to increase with all of the investments going into R&D and innovation. And I think from an academic perspective, I think what you need is to inculcate or to have the idea of research in the pharmacy degrees, and it should not be too pharmaceutical manufacturing kind of driven. It should be also research driven. There should be a lot of research emphasis in the pharmacy degrees, in the B Pharm and M Pharm degrees as well. And I'm sure that is happening, and that will take some time, but I think we need to make sure it happens soon enough so that when these graduates are there in the industry, when they work, they will be attracted to a career of research.
I'm still not, I'm still on that point. Why in India R&D is not a priority? Why the people who are working on the R&D segment are not well paid? Because at the end of the day, they are going to help our country in in the upcoming 10-year, 20-year future. And COVID has taught us everything. I think Adar Punewala's company, Serum One, Serum India, they were the only ones who had a COVID vaccine. Half of the world was dependent on Covaxin, yet India had its own Covishield. At that moment, I think the R&D department had shown that we are ready for it and we can deliver. At a very critical moment, India produced its own vaccine, which is, I would say, it's a very big achievement for us. None of the world had its own vaccine other than the Pfizer one. Now, even after that critical moment savior, the R&D department is still not well paid. Why do you think that is happening? Why is not the government seeing that, okay, this is one of the most important segments right now? And you may have heard on the news that again, COVID is coming back. There are rising cases in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Singapore, and even India. Cases have come up again because I think the vaccine immunity is going down. Again, there might be a scenario where we might be going into a pandemic. I won't say a pandemic. I would say COVID will rise again. Why is R&D not a priority right now?
See, all this time, even before the pandemic, research was like something on the side. It was like very namesake. You know, companies used to spend a small percentage of their revenue on research just to show कि हम लोग कुछ कर रहे हैं. Now it's become a reality. Now you know that you're on your own. When the pandemic happened, we were literally on our own. And the Covaxin story has been a success story that, it shows us that, when we want to do something, we can do it and we can deliver in a big way as well. So the research mindset is something that was not there in India. The money was there, we were spending on it, but that importance was not there because all this time we were relying on molecules from the West. Now we have realized we cannot rely on the West for molecules, especially in times of pandemics, where we need to then have a research ecosystem where we can fast track research and we can within say 100 days get a new vaccine or a new therapeutic agent approved. That will not be possible if we don't have some infrastructure in India. So the mindset has to change. And I think after the pandemic, the mindset has changed. In fact, it's drastically changed. You have a lot of companies now giving it serious thought, a lot of companies applying for world first therapies, in India. And that has happened. If you see in the last 3 years, you will see a lot of therapies which are not seen elsewhere in the world, which have now been approved in India. So you can put in any amount of money you want, but you cannot change a mindset, and the mindset takes years to change. Luckily for us, the mindset has changed, and I think it's changing even faster. In the next 10 years, people are going to give more importance to research and will be better prepared for future pandemics.
Let's talk about the government schemes. National Growth Vision, Viksit Bharat 2047. So while we were doing the research, we came on this thing and I found it very interesting. Viksit Bharat 2047, that is 2047 basically, has set an Indian target of $450 billion in Indian pharmaceutical industry. $450 billion is a huge money. And yet our government has planned that thing. And I think it is just 22 years now. That's it. What steps do you think the government needs to take in the fields of manufacturing, innovation, global positioning to actually achieve this target?
See, very honestly, we're not going to achieve $450 billion until and unless we develop and commercialize high value branded pharmaceutical products, including gene-based therapies, stem cell-based therapies, complex molecules. Right now, our industry is very good when it comes to low-cost generics. We can't, keep doing that and then assume we're going to reach that figure. So innovation, R&D, and genuine value should come from the pharma industry, and a lot of it, if you have to reach $450 billion, I believe should come not from big pharma, it should come from the MSME sector. There are some great minds there, and we need to innovate for it to reach that kind of position. So and the government schemes are in place. So there is a PRIP scheme that has been in place. Is going to start very soon, where the government has it's a 1,000 crore scheme which the government has started, which is great for especially companies in the MSME sector. Overall, I think the government R&D scheme is around a 5,000 crore scheme. But I think we need a lot more. I think we need at least 20,000 crores from the government into pharma research for us to reach that $450 billion mark. It is doable. We have the brains, we have the minds. Even if you look at the US, a lot of the top scientific minds are of Indian origin. So we can do it here in India also, and we can do it at an even better cost than what happens in the US. So I think that is required in India.
We talk about US a lot, don't we? And guys, $450 billion, $1 billion is equal to 8,500 crores, 8,500 crores. So you can multiply 450 into 8,500 crores, and then you can see what the number is. I don't think it will come in a calculator, but that's how it is going to do. So let's talk about the relationship between doctors and a pharmaceutical company. I think that's a very delicate situation because it's a mutually beneficial situation, and nobody can try to exclude the other one. So let's try to break the myths. I think the biggest myth that everybody knows and everybody has seen, if you come from a doctor family, there was always this one medical rep bhaiya that used to come and give us periodic gifts. It was a very simple thing. And I've seen that happening in all the doctor families. Now, because of that, in the general public, there is always this kind of, let's suppose, a rumor or a feeling that doctors tend to prescribe overpriced medicines, maybe the incorrect medicine for that particular moment, or the brand which is, of course, available at a lesser amount but is being given at a higher amount, a higher priced brand, only because the medical app has given them a gift. Now, is that scenario true in today's times?
See, historically that's been true, but now there is a new pharmaceutical marketing code that has been made mandatory for the pharma industry. It's called UCPMP, where there are a lot of strict norms laid out in terms of the engagement that pharma companies can have with doctors. It's a sea change. It's going to take some time for that to happen, but we've already started seeing that change in terms of the kind of gifts, or I would say reminder gifts you can give doctors, that it cannot be more than a certain value. For example, you cannot sponsor doctors for certain travel conferences and all of that. Again, there are certain requirements there. There are a lot of terms and conditions within the code, which is now mandatory, and every pharma company has had to sign up for it. So that is changing now. We are seeing a change now. In the last 2 years, this code has only been made mandatory for about a year. In this 1 year, we have seen a sea change already. I think in the next 5 years, we will move towards a purely ethical way of promotion, and that is important because as Indian pharma moves up the value chain, we're not going to be promoting me too copy paste formulations. We're going to be promoting high end products, and for that you need to have the right kind of field force. You need to have the right kind of marketing and sales, and it needs to be ethical. So I feel that's what is happening right now in India.
What do you think is the most ethical way to promote, your own brands and medicines to a doctor?
Firstly, to have a really well-trained field force who understand the science, the technology, so they could have a meaningful engagement with doctors. See, I think doctors also are quite, bored and sometimes quite frustrated with the number of MRs who just keep coming and talking about the same thing, showing the visual aid. That is getting very boring now. So what doctors want, especially the younger doctors, from what our understanding is, that they want to have a meaningful technical and scientific discussion with the medical rep, and they feel the medical rep somewhere is not trained enough to talk on those lines. I think that is what is needed. So further training of the medical field force, also getting more involved in the academic side of things. I think if the industry and doctors can work together to create like an academic research hub in India, I think that could also be a good platform for promoting some of the high-end value-based innovations that are going to come out of India in the next few years.
But don't you think that we are repeating the same mistake? There is no, let's suppose, research and development in the sales rep as well. 1 year back, the sales rep was used to, promoting your medicines, your brand to a doctor by commercial means only. I mean, let's take a Goa trip, let's take a Thailand trip, maybe an iPhone, maybe a TV. The medicine took a backseat, and the whole conversation was just commercial, luring the doctor to, you know, asking him basically, okay, take this thing and promote our brand. And today, within just 1 year, we are asking them to know everything about the medicine in a scientific way, which is, of course, uh, I would say, a very high level of knowledge that they need to acquire. So, are you saying that the pharmaceutical companies will actually train their sales rep to know everything about a medicine, everything about a pharmaceutical brand, and to pitch it to the doctor through scientific ways? I think that's impossible.
I think it is happening. Upskilling our pharma field force is something that is happening across the industry. We're seeing that. We are seeing pharma companies, enroll their people, on courses so they can understand a bit of pharmacology. They can understand how medicines work. That is the only way. See, there is no other alternative. Yes, it will take a while. Some companies may be able to achieve it in a shorter period of time. Some companies may take a bit longer, but I think that is the only way. And we're doing it actively now. There is no other way. And wherever it is working for us, and wherever we've managed to train our field force, it's showing the results, and doctors are appreciating it. Ki abhi kuch, they can have a meaningful discussion with the doctor. So that is the way forward, and I believe that is going to happen. You're talking about the next 5 years. I think you'll see that happen across India.
What are the other myths about relationship between doctors and a pharmaceutical company you can tell us right now?
So, you talked about this earlier, that there is a kind of a myth that the engagement between a medical rep and a doctor is transactional. That's not always the case. Yeah, it has happened kind of historically, but in many of the areas where the doctors support a pharma company in a big way, it is very much ethical also. Like in our company, for example, just to give you an example, we have third generation doctors supporting us purely through ethical means, because they understand what the company is doing when it comes to innovation in research and all of that. Like that, there are many big companies in India who are getting business from doctors which have no transactional kind of relevance at all. So it is not that it's a purely corrupt industry. There are pockets of corruption in the industry, no doubt, and that is being looked at, and that will also change. But largely, if you look at it, the pharma industry, has had meaningful interactions with doctors as well, beyond just the transactional aspect that we talked about.
Let's talk about doctors entering into pharmaceutical industry. Let's suppose a doctor, maybe a pharmacologist, a medicine guy, wants to enter into the world of pharmaceuticals. What is the easiest way to enter into it?
So either they could, be a part of the medical affairs teams. And nowadays, a lot of companies, even the smaller pharma companies, are having a separate kind of medical affairs department. It was known to be just something in big pharma, but it's happening across the board now. In fact, pharma companies now want to have doctors, on their payroll, because they know the value they could add in terms of advising them, in terms of medical strategy, medicines management, medicines information. And as we move towards a value-driven system, I think a lot of the high-value medicines will need doctors on board by the pharma company, so that expertise is there. If you have a pharma company with a lot of doctors in their payroll, it also kind of improves the overall impression, and adds further to what the pharma company is trying to do. So that is one area. The other area is research. In the R&D and innovation. Again, there are many pharma companies who have doctors in their departments helping in R&D as well. Pharmacovigilance is an area which is again going to become more prominent in India. For that, you'll also need medical doctors in the teams to guide and kind of advise pharma companies. So there are now a lot more opportunities than what there were before. Those prospects, I think, will further grow.
Let's suppose you're talking to a young post grad who has done his MD, maybe his DM, and he now wants to start a pharmaceutical company. Now, as a layman, what would be your advice? How should he or she think of starting their own pharmaceutical company? What is the minimum investment required? What is the minimum infrastructure required? And what is the thought process that is required to make it a success?
So if somebody wants to start a pharma company, firstly, they need to have the technical knowledge of pharmaceutical manufacturing and research. So that is the first thing. You need to obviously have the funding, which is relatively easier these days, but more than that, you need to have a mindset of innovation. Otherwise, you'll start a pharma company and have the same Me Too brands and the same kind of copy paste medicines that you see in the market. So, if somebody genuinely wants to start a pharma company, it has to be through innovation. And for that, they need to have more than a business background, they need to have a technical background. So, get into a pharmacy college, do a pharmacy degree, do post graduation there, do maybe a bit of research or become a PhD, and then come into the pharma industry. That is the way forward. And I think that is the kind of pharma companies we need in India, rather than what I call is the weeds of the pharma industry, where a lot of these Me Too companies, 1+1 companies are coming out, which is not doing any service to our nation at all.
What is the minimum investment required to start a pharmaceutical company?
So to start a pharma company, I think you would need an investment of at least 10 CR, where you would have a decent manufacturing setup for generic medicines, for example. You could obviously get funding from outside as well. If you want to have a really a kind of a top class, high standard pharma manufacturing unit that is US FDA approved, for example, you're looking at least 30 to 40 CR. So that is the kind of investment you need. Now, whether you want to have that kind of factory or a lower standard factory is up to you. I believe that we need to have really top class manufacturing units in India. In India, out of 12,500 manufacturers, only 20% of them are WHO GMP approved. Now that really shows that we have a long way to go to further increase manufacturing standards. So anyone wanting to invest, I believe, should spend a lot more money to make sure their factory is proper state of the art. That is one way of doing it, probably the best way of doing it as well. Apart from that, it really depends on whether you want to put in your own money for it, or you can have finance through the banks as well, who are also willing to fund manufacturing units as well. So it depends on which way you want to go, and but probably private equity funding would probably be the best way to start off with.
You're talking about that the doctors lack the skill to start a pharmaceutical company. So, what skills would you say are mandatory to be a successful pharmaceutical brand, especially for a doctor?
See, you need a combination of pharmaceutical research skills and marketing skills. If you don't know how to commercialize your research, you will struggle, you know. So you need to have an awareness of marketing and sales. You need to have an awareness and an understanding of business management. You need to know, the business, achieving skills. You need to know how to manage your finances, so financial skills. It's a bit of everything really, but the core of it is your technical skills. You need to know how a medicine is manufactured from start to finish, and all the processes that are a part of that journey. If you don't know that, then I think you will only be a business person, and you'll have no idea about what the technical aspect of things is, and you won't know how to answer if and when things go wrong.
So, doctors, apart from doing MBBS and MD, of course, they can't go for B Pharma, they can't do their PhDs. What are the small courses that you can recommend that will help a doctor learn the skill of the pharmaceutical world?
So nowadays there are a lot of kind of crash courses and short-term courses offered by pharmacy colleges in India that kind of give you a basic understanding of pharmaceutical technology. There are a lot of online courses as well, which doctors can also go for. So it's easier than what it was before, and we're living in an online world now where literally you can get any kind of training online. But those skills, I believe, are mandatory. to actually progress and to get into the pharma industry.
Let's talk about the production of generic medicines in India. Now, I know so many people who are basically, for example, I know somebody in the central part of India who is making ORS. All right. And they are supplying ORS to big brands like Cipla or Mankind. And of course, they are putting up their own brands and uh, putting it to the customers. Now, how does this supply chain work? How does Cipla make sure that the generic medicine producer is putting out that medicine or maybe whatever content they are producing to that kind of level which is actually beneficial for the customers at the end? How does this supply chain work?
See, I feel generic medicines is a myth. The whole idea of going towards generics is so that the price to the consumer or to the patient is controlled and is more affordable. Unfortunately, that's not happening. We have generic medicines in India today which are priced more than even some of the branded medicines.
Can you give me an example by any chance?
I will not want to go into specifics here, but if you go to any generic chemist counter, you will see a lot of them. You will see it even in eye drops. You will see it in painkillers, in cardiovascular medicine as well, where you will have a tablet costing, say, a strip costing 200 rupees, the brand, and the generic costs around the same, if not more. When you talk about generics, I feel the people benefiting are the people in the supply chain. It becomes a retailer's market. The retailer then kind of keeps majority of the cut, and that those benefits are not passed to the patients. So I don't think the generics model in India works. We in India we already have a system of price control where certain molecules under NPPA are controlled in terms of price. I think that is good enough. Generics is not actually even, it's a gray area. It's very easy to say that we'll have generics and the people are going to save money. I don't think it has. And if you do case studies now, I don't believe generic medicines has actually helped in lowering the cost of medicines for patients. The price control system under NPPA that has actually delivered. But the concept of generic medicines in India is very vague, and it's more of just a talking point just to keep people happy, but I don't think it's working. So companies who are into generic medicines use the same strategy that they would have for brands. Only thing is they give more of the cut to the retailers. So the people don't benefit at the end of the day.
India is said to produce 35% of fake drugs in the world. What is the actual scale of this crisis? And why does it still persist when there's so much tighter regulations and rules and crackdown?
See, I think the 35% number is, it's terribly hyped up. There is no relevance for it. There were some media reports on this as well. See, these numbers have not been confirmed by the WHO, nor have they been confirmed by the CDSCO as well. Just to give you an example, is out of say 200 defected quality medicines identified in the market, say in March, only one of them was known to be a counterfeit medicine. So I don't think it is a big problem in India. It is no doubt a problem which has got worse since the pandemic, but I don't think it's a big problem. The good thing is that our CDSCO has taken a very strong stand in this, and they are regularly carrying out random drug sampling. They're checking across India for this, for spurious drugs, for substandard drugs, for counterfeit medicines, and they're taking very strict action with companies who have been found to be involved in any of these kind of activities. It is definitely not 35%. It's a much smaller percentage, and there's no kind of reports on it as well. But I think maybe in the years to come, that should also be in the public knowledge also, in terms of what is the exact percentage.
And for the last question of today's podcast, before we move on to the rapid fire, so Nikhil ji, ye bataiye that you are a very learned man. You have done continuous learning throughout your journey. So which are the 3 podcasts, books, open journal sources, or things that you learn from? Basically, can you recommend to our audience how they can increase their knowledge every single day?
So there is the Lancet Voice, which is a podcast which talks about some of the latest research and scientific data that's out there. You have something called as the India Science, which is run by the government, and that is amazing from an Indian perspective. We obviously have your podcast, which I've been following for a long time,
Thank
and
you
I
so
think
much.
that is a game changer for doctors especially. So yeah, those are the podcasts, and there are many more also, and I'm sure many more will come in the years to come.
Thank you so much, my brother, for the kind words. And with this, we come to the end of the main discussion and we move to the rapid fire. And guys, you know the simple rules. You have to be super truthful and super spontaneous. सोचना नहीं है, जल्दी बताना है, ठीक है? Are you ready?
Yes,
Perfect. Favorite vacation spot?
Kashmir.
Which watch are you wearing? I love that watch, by the way.
I don't know. It's an unbranded watch.
But it's looking beautiful. I think you are a watch guy.
Yes, I am.
Favorite brand?
I'm a very there's no brand preference. So I don't like brands. I just like the design.
Generic.
I love top quality generic designs.
So you are rooted to the ground from the day one, and I really like that about you. Very impressive. I think people like these are the ones who will take us to a better future. You know why? Because they always know it's not about the brand, it's about the content, it's about the quality. If you're giving good quality, the brand does not matter. Public will love it, the consumers will get benefited, and that's what the real change is all about. What's the one thing you had automate in your daily routine?
I think managing my emails. I think I get almost 300 emails a day, and then to prioritize them is a big challenge. I think if I could have something to automate that, it'll be great for me and my daily work.
If you could master any language overnight, which one and why?
I think Sanskrit. Always been fascinated by that. It's called the language of the gods. I think that's something I would love to learn. And I wish I learned it during my school time, but I guess it's never too late.
100 crores in the bank or 5 sports cars?
I think 50 crores in the bank and 50 crores for a good charitable cause. I have a quite a philanthropic mindset always. 100 crore leke kya karenge? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't need 100 crores very honestly to live. So I'm be happy with say 50 crores for myself in the bank.
If you had to delete all but one app from your phone, which one would that be?
WhatsApp is the need of the hour. I think that's a communication model, so a skill. So I mean, yes, definitely WhatsApp.
Local street food or a fancy restaurant?
Local street food. There's no substitute for local street food.
Philosophy of life?
I think philosophy of compassion, courage, and love for everyone.
So thank you so much, my friend. It has been a wonderful podcast. It was great talking to you. You have given us a huge insight of the whole pharmaceutical world. And I think you have shown the doctors, our audience, that yes, the pharmaceutical world is changing every day. We have to let go of the past, of those MRs and everything. And we have to think about the future. And you have told us the right way to go ahead. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys. I hope you have loved today's show. I believe the real motto of today's podcast was, again, I'm repeating, that the pharmaceutical world has changed. It has gone to a new world altogether. There's a huge exposure. Things are changing on a daily basis. R&D is the way to go. And we have the right people leading us to a new future. So before you end this podcast, do not forget to like, share and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Show them the truth about the pharmaceutical world. And together, we'll create a great future. Thank you so much and best of luck.